All right, folks, welcome to our penultimate session for the day. I'm Professor David Cross from Deakin University. It's my great pleasure to be stewarding what is a really important conversation for all of us to be having regarding ideas of wellness and post-COVID experience and how to move beyond and through. So the final session or this penultimate session, sorry, takes a slightly different tack in reflecting on and offering practical advice and strategies for dealing with the fallout of COVID within the tertiary sector. After nearly 2 years of managing the litany of challenges from developing and implementing bespoke online learning environments on the fly from scratch, supporting students, many of whom have mental health challenges, supporting colleagues with these conditions, and in many cases homeschooling for their dependents, all the while facing the potential or reality of universities significantly cutting or reducing programs. How are we to recover from this dumpster fire of challenges? It's one thing to embody the stiff upper lip ethos and simply soldier on, but the cost to staff and students of managing and negotiating the assorted layers of trauma is still being calculated. We as a sector have been damaged, and it would be naive to assume that with lockdowns ending and a potential return to COVID normal in 2022, that everything will spring back to 2019 settings. Powering out of COVID assumes there's a bit left in the tank, but this is a big assumption, especially when we're still trying to process and calibrate the trauma matrix. I'm very pleased to introduce our two guest speakers for this session, Julia Edwards from Entertainment and Assist and Derek Gascoigne from UniSuper, who will offer perspectives on how we might develop some practical strategies of resilience, both emotional and financial. Following these presentations, there'll be an opportunity to share your perspective on negotiating the COVID era. How have academics and students responded to these remarkable teaching, learning, and research conditions? What strategies have you or your institutions instigated to, as far as possible, mitigate the effects of pandemic education? Should we be given 3 months recovery leave? Damn right, I hear you collectively say. What about the additional research time to rebuild art and design practices? Support to learn about leading edge online delivery? How can we best balance on-campus working from home modes, and how does this impact studio and classroom learning? What sort of wellbeing support generally needs to be put in place both for students and for staff? We're just as interested in hearing from all of you in the session about how you're feeling and how you've responded to the last 18 months. So feel free to unfold your feelings and thoughts in the chat function, and hopefully we'll have some time in the last wee period to engage in a Q&A. So my first guest introduces Julia Edwards, is General Manager of Entertainment Assist and has over 20 years experience in leadership roles in the corporate, community and government sectors, including 10 years working in general management roles for a range of influential not-for-profits. With experience in marketing, sales, fundraising and project management, and a record of developing valuable relationships through stakeholder engagement, Julia's passionate about building collaborative support to fund research and mental health training programs for the Australian entertainment industry. It's wonderful to have you with us, Julia. And our second presenter is Derek Gascoigne. He's the State Manager for UniSuper for Victoria and Tasmania. Derek's been with UniSuper for over 11 years, and his career in financial services spans 23 years and counting. Derek has spent the majority of that time working with individual clients to improve and optimize their financial positions and help them provide for themselves in a better retirement. So great to have you with us, Derek. So we're going to begin with Julia. So Julia, I'll pass over to you.
Great. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. I hope you've managed to get through what is a crazy day today. I'm going to share my screen with you now and talk to you a little bit about some work that Entertainment Assist does. So I'll start off by letting you know that Entertainment Assist is a national health promotion charity that supports the mental health and wellbeing of the Australian entertainment industry. And our mental health program that we designed is called Intermission, and it is a direct result of and response to a university project that we carried out in 2016, which actually pointed out some pretty sobering statistics in terms of what the mental health landscape was in entertainment. So I'm going to take you through that just very briefly and tell you a little bit about why we do what we do. The research actually revealed our statistics in comparison to the normal population that suicide attempts were more than double. Suicide ideation was up to 9 times higher in tech and crew roles. Moderate to severe anxiety was 10 times higher and depression 5 times higher. Now, more disturbingly, 5 Australian entertainment industry workers try and take their own lives every week. So we wanted to arrest that with the development of Intermission. So it's a mental health training program specifically designed to look at the nuances and distresses that are unique to the entertainment industry and start building self-management strategies for people, either whether they're learning their craft to transition to industry or already in industry and looking for better self-management and coping mechanisms for an industry that's always going to throw some curveballs in terms of working conditions at you. So, with that said, just for some examples that we've uncovered, we look at the statistics that the research unturned for us. So we look at, 44% of our entertainment industry workers are sleep deprived. Now, this is due to a number of facts. When you think about working in shows, a lot of people think it's glitz, glam, it's stardom, but it's often on tour. It's often traveling, touring, long hours, going, bumping in, bumping out, working from shift to shift, not getting time to socialise, not getting time to wind down, just the anxiety provided with being in a production team can have an enormous effect on somebody's sleep. So we see here that I'm just going to touch on a couple of statistics for you. And this one's particularly relevant as we're coming out of COVID now. The financial uncertainty in the gig economy of the entertainment industry is probably one of the biggest factors for those elevated levels around depression, anxiety, and suicide. We've had it's a gig economy where people have to piecemeal or supplement their income through other works. So if you can imagine, both in New South Wales and Victoria, the past 18 months, when you're in a lockdown environment, there's not even an ability to supplement your income. So right now we know for our workers with recent research that financial uncertainty and distress is the #1 factor for the people in our industry right now. So a couple here that we're looking at too. So we look at anxiety. We talk about signs and symptoms. We talk about depression, anxiety, suicide factors, peer-to-peer support models, but we talk about, for example, anxiety is a serious and debilitating condition, an area of concern for psychological well-being of entertainment industry workers. It can lead to be a risk factor for suicide and can be due to the unique stresses pertaining to working within the entertainment industry. So we kind of nut out sort of signs and symptoms for our participants so that they can start to recognise what is going on for them, because quite often people actually feel validated when they see that we've done research specifically in our industry. They know that we're talking the talk and we're walking in their shoes for them. So they were some startling figures that I've shared with you, but one common thing with our empaths and our creatives is passion was the one thing that motivated them. So they absolutely love what they do. They love their craft. They want to help one another, but they don't know how. So we know that they love their work. They've got some industry challenges. We take them through a series called Say, Stay and Strive, and that's particularly when people are working in groups or studying in teams. And we've done a number of years in a row with the Swinburne Film, Media and ICT student groups. So we're getting that longitudinal depth of study too as students study. We talk to them about their say, stay and strive. So it's like, what do you say about what you do? Where are you, your team? And so people start really understanding what are their motivating factors to say, stay and strive at what they do. Grief and loss here is this is a model that's been used since 1969. So I apologise if it sounds really old, but we've tried to modernise it in an emoji way, and I think it's a really good example of what we've all experienced in the past 18 months: the denial, the anger, the depression, bargaining, and acceptance. And they're not linear; they can change, they can be interchangeable. But people were very much grieving for a loss of being able to, and a loss of identity for not being able to deliver what is their craft. So what was their purpose and passion? So we talk about those stages with our teams so that people get a handle of things that they might be feeling similarly for industry as well. And then we go into, once we talk about the mental health challenges, we talk about this re-entry anxiety. And I think this is an important one for us to touch on because there's a lot of overwhelm. That's the sense that we're getting at the moment, that people are missing the old normal. What is the new variant? Is there going to be another COVID strain that's going to come in and do this to us all again? So there's a lot of anxiety about getting back to the new normal. So as we map through the exercises, we continue to talk about the myths around suicide, how to recognise signs and symptoms, and how you can possibly be support. So we take people through some scenarios here, and we talk through these elements here because most of all what we're trying to do is arrest these concerning statistics. Then we have some conversation guides as well, and I'm happy to share these, David, across the network after the session, because these are really great things just to have in your tea room if you're feeling a bit stuck, or if you're feeling that you've noticed somebody's changed or something's changed, a behavioural pattern has changed. These are some really good tips around having a conversation and not feeling the pressure to actually find a solution for somebody, but to let them to make sure that people understand that they're cared for and that you're within arm's reach if need be. Tools of engagement is actually a set of actions around recognising signs and symptoms for people. So again, we've talked about the re-entry. We talked through here what we need to do. Maybe we've got, can we set the benchmark so high as we re-enter? Do we need to be more elastic and tolerant with ourselves and with each other as we move back into this recovery piece? So what we do know is that these stresses around shift work, late nights, low pay, supplementing income, bargaining, competition are always going to be there in the entertainment industry. But if we can give people ways to recognise, manage, reflect on their own self-management tools, they're going to sort of understand what works best for them. So we go through a section of self-care planning, and this is a really important model where we give our participants opportunities to look at some of the challenges that are going on for them and the support strategies that they can put in place and building connections to stay well. So this is a session here that's up on screen that we would normally give individuals in a face-to-face environment at least half an hour. And in an online environment, we give about 10 minutes and then we do a little bit of follow-up because it's very hard to make people sit and focus for half an hour when you're sending a remote workshop. So then we talk about support circles and where people can look to areas of support in their community and wearing different hats around what their contribution is in their community. They're not just defined by their craft. So people have many roles, and to recognise that as well. So I'm just going to take you to that slide. And forgive me if it's moving a little slowly because it's a big file. We took out human hats. So if I click on this slide, I'm going to bring that up. I'm not sure if that's going to window slideshow. So what we'll do here is we will, this is our analogy here. We've got the woman wearing the many hats, and we talk about people defining themselves with what sort of hats that they would be wearing. And that's a really good activity for people to do to add their sense of purpose in life. Also, the Ikigai is a beautiful Japanese model. Some of you may be familiar with this already. We know that this is quite a popular one. But that's also looking at what do you love and what are you good at and what does the world need from you and how can you add value. So by going through this program, we hope that people can tap into themselves and really define other elements of their life when everything that was normal was taken away. Then we talk through help and support models for our participants, and these are all really credible support lines that people can find, and we've actually done the research for you. We also encourage our participants to look for signs in others. But we've also, through COVID, like everybody, we had to adapt to a new normal of working remotely. So we developed a free webinar series, because what we do know is quite often when people are thinking about things, it's often not during the hours of a 9 to 5 helpline. So we designed a set of webinars that people could tap into. They'd be 5 to 7 minute webinars. And at the end of each of these, they'd have a list of credible pathways for support for the individual to pursue further. So that's intermission. Our goal is obviously to arrest the statistics, and our whole goal is that we can equip people with better self-management skills around mental health. And these are great models that can be adapted across any sector. It's just that we've blanketed it with our research and our knowledge with a evidence-informed lens to talk about the knowledge we know within the sector. So we've had quite a bit of momentum around clients participating in that. And when I say clients, I mean arts working groups. And we're getting some fantastic responses, and we continue to measure everything that we do. And we work with Swinburne Uni, who actually does the evaluation data set for us that shows some really good shifts in attitudes around managing mental health after participating. So it's something that we'll continue to grow and be topical around as issues arise. And I was very happy to share that with you today. So I hope that's something that you've enjoyed. It's very much a snapshot, and there is much more information available on our homepage at entertainmentassist.org.au, and I'd be happy to field any questions as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Julia. There's a question from Kit, which I'll come to in a moment. I just wanted to ask a question about duty of care and engaging with people in a Zoom or a team space. It's easy to check in on people when you're face-to-face to see how they're going. You get the face, the body language, etc.
Yes.
In this virtual space, checking in and making sure people are okay is a slightly different beast. And I'm just interested about whether you had any thoughts in terms of, how that can kind of operate in such a way where that duty of care is still there without it feeling like it's too contrived.
Yes, absolutely, David. So we start the session obviously in our housekeeping. First of all, it's co-facilitated. So it's often facilitated by myself or our business development manager, but also with our psychologist on hand, who is a performing arts worker as well. But we do, in our housekeeping, we give people prompts if they're feeling triggered, and some support lines that they can call, such as Lifeline or the Support Act Wellbeing Helpline. We encourage people to chat with us if they need to, and obviously in a chat function in Zoom, you can chat to an individual, not just a group, so that we can check in there. But we also do at several points, because particularly in that initial session when we're presenting data on statistics around suicide, anxiety, and some of those stresses around isolation and connection and poor sleep, we realise that it can be confronting for people. So we do several prompts of please check in, and as you know, emojis are great these days. We get people to symbolise how they're feeling, or if they want to talk, we also encourage that as well. So at the end of each session, we also make ourselves available for offline chats with individuals if needed. So it is a really important fact that we do have that check-in duty of care in our housekeeping at the beginning, so people know the state of play. We also tell people if it's too much and they just need to check out for 5 minutes or just feel it's too much for them, that's okay too. So what we don't want to be doing is traumatising any participants by making them sit through things they don't want to hear. Sure. So, yeah, good point.
Thank you. There's a question from Kit, and he's asking about the challenges of reopening in the cultural sector. I think he's asking specifically about how certain universities in New York have become ghost towns because staff have been working remotely and they don't actually want to go back into that space. But maybe we can ask that question more broadly from your experience in the wider cultural sector around anxieties about returning to performance spaces, theatrical spaces, etc., and being in that proximity now to be more perhaps potentially at greater risk of COVID. So there's this anxiety perhaps around opening up, as much as it's a fantastic thing. Any thoughts in that space about the challenges that we face in the reopening of these cultural spaces?
Yes, and that is a very big issue around the re-entry anxiety. And what we are encouraging is to follow the guidelines. So we work with Live Performance Australia, and every day they do a daily bulletin pretty much across the country for different sectors around what's encouraged and what's permitted at any given point in time. So I mean, we just say you've got to trust your gut too. Like if there's something that you're concerned about and you don't feel the environment's right, you've got to go with trusting your gut. But when it comes to live performance, you particularly need to follow the advice of the sector that's giving you that advice.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Julia. We'll definitely come back and no doubt there'll be some more points brought up after we've had Derek present. So Derek, we might bring you in here. And your focus today is going to be thinking about some of the financial implications of COVID and the instabilities and uncertainties. And, as there's been so many things that have been brought up in relationship to the absence of security over the last 18 months, you're going to bring us into a kind of a dialogue around some of the financial implications of that. So I'll pass over to you.
That's all right. Thanks, David. And I have to admit, with my screen set up, if someone puts their hand up or asks a question, and it's please interrupt me, and I'll stop and answer the question as well. So again, thanks, David, and thanks, Julia, for that before. And I hope everyone's had a great session so far today, power outages notwithstanding. So I'm going to stick very much in my wheelhouse here in terms of just talking about well-being from a financial perspective, and everything that David said and some of the things that Julia also referred to earlier as well ring absolutely true here, and that there's no doubt COVID in general has contributed a significant amount of financial stress onto the shoulders of people within your sector, and many others as well, but definitely felt more keenly in and around entertainment, hospitality, tourism as well. And we see that to a degree through some of our memberships as well. So my intention today is to really touch upon this notion of financial well-being, recognizing and acknowledging the stresses and pressures that are facing those in the sector, but also acknowledging that financial well-being is one part of overall well-being, and it's necessary to treat if you're going to have a successful position of well-being moving forward as well. So there's physical, there's mental, and there's absolutely financial as well. So I'm going to look at a few things which I think hopefully people can be quick takeaways for today. But also too, I'm going to talk a little bit later on about ways in which you can get some further assistance from us as well. So again, just want to say part of overall well-being, absolutely money can be the source of stress in Australia. I remember my father said before he left my mother that when poverty comes in the door, love goes out the window, and I think that rings so true in so many cases as well. And similar to what Julia covered there as well, we know that, and we see it in amongst our members and our clients, that when people are financially stressed, it affects their health and their relationships, difficulty sleeping, like Julia said. There's can be anger, there can be fear, mood swings, tiredness, physical discomfort, loss of appetite, withdrawing from others. We do see these as part of the work that we do with people as well. So we're very cognizant of the fact that financial stress is a huge part of financial well-being. But all those things, sleeping, loss of appetite, etc., they are normal reactions to stress. However, obviously, when you're faced with that, the best thing you can do is nip it in the bud as quickly as you can. Again, just for more framing it as well, is that I think financial stress is not limited to any one particular sector or group or whatever. That I'm telling you something you already know. Here's some statistics which really bring it all home here as well, and these are taken from a ME Bank's biannual household comfort report as well. And it's staggering. 86% of Australians don't know how much money they're spending every month. 82% don't know what their home loan interest rate is as well. Most of us say it's around this. And around half of households have less than $7,000 in the bank. So, and whilst all these stats are absolutely confronting, there's no doubt about that. I think the most staggering and jarring statistic on there for me is where 1 in 5 Australians have less than $1,000 in savings. So this certainly sees many living effectively from payday to payday, and I've got absolutely no doubt that a huge majority of the people in your sector are facing that struggle as it stands at the moment. So again, what I want to do today is just give you some pointers, if you will, and some guidance and some education, which might help alleviate some of the various sources of financial stress that you're facing, because it is important to get back in control. And if the earlier you can start doing this, even by taking some very, very simple steps, the quicker you'll be on your way to sort of restoring that component of your well-being. So I've got again some points here as well. Think of it as a, if you will, a laundry list, or at least a suggestion list of things that you could potentially. I mean, this is a great foundation. If you're looking to think, I've got money issues, or I'm not in control of my financial situation as well. These 6 points really, to me, are the ones which I find resonate most with people who are currently undergoing some degree of financial stress. So number 1 is around actually getting control of your cash flow. And whilst I appreciate there are challenges around actually creating cash flow to begin with, and that's about opening up, it's about jobs, it's about, certainty and those types of things as well. But when that happens, having a framework in place to manage that is really important. And one that I refer to a lot, particularly with my younger clients, is this 50-30-20 rule. So you can actually Google this. It's a concept that was created by Elizabeth Warren in the US, written a number of books about it. But it simply says that, when your income comes in, 50% goes towards effectively the essentials, 30% goes towards the rainy day, the emergency type money, and 20% goes to the future. So that might be additional super contributions, it might be cash savings, it could be absolutely anything. And whilst the number themselves aren't set in stone, and you can change those around as per your situation, people have found that when they've actually implemented a framework in place, their ability to manage their money and feel more comfortable about managing cash flow increases significantly. And a lot of people I've spoken to have actually created 3 different bank accounts, and they simply divert their income accordingly, such as that. Insurance is key, because the greatest risk often to someone's financial position, and family for that matter, is not necessarily a loss of income. It's actually either the death, the permanent, and generally speaking more so the temporary incapacity of a breadwinner. So we would say to people, check your insurances at a minimum, make sure you've got some cover for death if you need it, something for what we call TPD, or total and permanent disablement. What if you could never work again? Yes, there's some government income support. However, your expenses are likely to be more than that, and you can actually obtain cover for these types of things very easily. You can do it through your superannuation fund, as an example, where you're not actually using your general cash flow to fund it. And also income protection as well, because not everyone who gets injured or ill is in a situation where they can never work again. Sometimes they just simply off work for a protracted period of time. So having that type of cover in place is incredibly powerful as well. Obviously, you want to have some form of investment strategy. Superannuation might be all that you need. However, if you think there's some benefit to you doing a mixture of inside super investing and outside super investing, seek some advice, talk to people, read a book. The Barefoot Investor is very popular on mainstream channels. But by all means, think about what your approach is going to be beyond just living from paycheck to paycheck, even though I appreciate that some people are in a position where they can't do much more than that for the moment. Diversify. So this speaks to the investment side of things. So most of us would have superannuation in some form or another. And we're huge advocates of ensuring that people don't put all their eggs in one basket. So don't necessarily invest solely in one particular asset class, like I'm going to put all my money in just BHP, or I'm going to put all my money in just Australian shares, or something along those lines as well. Most superannuation funds and investment funds offer diversified options where the money's spread across a number of things. And that just means that when the markets do funny things, and they're pretty good at doing funny things from time to time, you're not going to feel the impact of that as keenly, because not every single asset class goes down at the same time as everything else. They often perform in inverse relationships as well. And the key thing I would say is that if someone's starting like a savings plan, $20 a week, $50 a week, maybe just what they're doing with their superannuation contributions that are obligated to be paid under superannuation guarantee, pick a strategy that's right for you. So make it something that you are comfortable with from a risk perspective. And then again, when the markets do something funny, like they did in February, March last year, in part of what we call the COVID crash, which only really lasted for around 22 trading days as well, is that you're not spooked when that happens, because you know that if you stay the course, that you'll come out the other side of it really well. Because it's important for us, because most people have, outside of their home, their superannuation will become their biggest financial asset. And a lot of that money is exposed to the daily vagaries of the investment market. So if you can understand volatility, understand how your strategy links into it, and understand that volatility is simply a part of investing, and knowing how to react to it, for many people will reduce those shocks that they get when they look at their balance at a particular time or a particular day when the market's fallen, and then they suddenly start worrying about what does that mean for their future. And the worst things that sometimes people can do is that during a period of market depreciation, people flee to safety. They switch into cash, and then they stay there. But the problem is, when they stay there, they're actually missing the upswing in the market as well, because a second decision is need to be made, is that when you move from something which is in the market to something that's completely cash, as an example, it requires a second decision to get back in. So we would say, again, volatility is normal. If you're younger, generally speaking, you can afford, based upon time horizons, to take on a large degree of risk. And even when you're older, let's say you're in your 60s and maybe thinking about retirement at some point, you still have statistically somewhere between 20, 30 years of life expectancy remaining. So that's a long time to remain invested for. And this slide for me really says that quite powerfully, in that, when it comes to your savings, when it comes to your super, if they're invested in the market, because investing in cash is not necessarily a winning strategy and has probably never been, know that, yes, when you look at small time frames, which is essentially that top line, it goes up and it can go down from one year to the next. But generally speaking, there are more positive years than negative years. But as we start to look at rolling returns over longer periods of time, as you can see there on the left-hand side, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years, etc., is that the market will, generally speaking, on average, always appreciate. So if you're worrying about the now in terms of cash flow and paying the next bill, that's absolutely fine. But you also have to have another eye on the future. And one more slide which really brings that home for me is this one here, which really shows someone who stays the course in that first column there, who invested $10,000 back in 1980, will be in that sort of position. But someone who misses just even the 5, 10, or 30 days in the market through a combination of switching out and trying to avoid downturns and et cetera, can be in significantly worse positions as a result of not staying the course. Now, again, for everyone, it is different in the sense that a lot of stress we see is around I think I need to work till I'm dead, or I don't know how I'm tracking, and I don't think I'll ever have enough to do what I need to do, etc. Here are some stats that the Association of Super Funds of Australia put together as well. And I guess I'd probably draw your attention mostly to, a comfortable lifestyle and the type of lump sum that someone really needs, whether you're in a single or in a couple arrangement, or a couple combined, I should say here, would need to meet those types of objectives. Now, this assumes a couple of things: retirement at age pension age, and also some form of age pension as well, that there's no mortgage at that time, etc. So there are some underlying assumptions which aren't too outrageous, but they definitely exist there. And just on the right hand side, you can see that for all of Australia, the average balances for across all funds in Australia versus also what they are in UniSuper, there's a gap. And it's no matter at what stage of your career you're at, no matter how old you are, and I appreciate that there's always a competition for cash flow, but where you can, there needs to be an eye on the future as well, because that notion of I don't know how prepared I am for retirement, I don't know how adequate my capital is going to be to meet my needs. These are real sources of stresses for people. And again, it will depend upon your stage of life and career as well. But above all of this, I would say to people, you do not have to go it alone. And I think the key thing here is that if you are in any form of financial stress and you don't think you can find a way out yourself to it, there are plenty of places to turn to for help. And not all advice is chargeable. A lot of advice is free. It's called general advice. It's about giving you factual information and will help you put the pieces together to come up with a solution which will find you a way forward out of a financially stressful situation that you might be in as well. And for a lot of people, it's about, I'm in this situation. What can I do right now to improve my lot? Now, there's only so much that a person can do that's helping them. Obviously, it requires someone to, secure employment, and I know those are challenges which are probably a bit beyond someone who acts in an advisory space. But look, certainly there are plenty, and there are always things that can be done to help a person improve their situation, whether it be now, whether it be between now and retirement, or even at the point of retirement as well. And look, just lastly, as I said, if you didn't get a copy of that list of 6 items earlier, I'm quite happy to recirculate that after this. But I would be wanting today to at least to say to you, look, you can help. If you don't know what it is, if you can't quantify it, financial stress is a thing. It contributes to overall well-being, but there's plenty of things that you can do to address it. And whilst I'm here telling you things that isn't personal advice, and that's what this disclaimer is basically designed to do, I do want to let you know that if you do want help, UniSuper do offer an advice service. We offer what we call general or free advice as well. So we have a number of people qualified to give guidance around this. And we also have a personal advice service, which is what I'm a part of, where we'll actually get into the weeds, get into the nitty-gritty of a person's situation, and essentially put ourselves in their shoes and say, well, look, based upon what we know, this is what we would do. And sometimes that's what a person needs. But we're absolutely happy to help and guide people as well. So on that note, David, I will probably throw back to you, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you so much, Derek. I think it's fantastic how you've unfolded the need for planning, and you've also sort of, in a sense, demythologized some of the ideas around finance and money and talked in really practical terms. I don't want to speak for my colleagues here, but I know I'm probably as guilty as anybody of seeing money in a reasonably ambivalent space, perhaps up until COVID. My ethos was always, money was like toilet paper. You didn't need a lot of it. You just didn't want to run out of it. And yet at the same time, I think what you kind of talked about today is the sense of planning, because COVID is a crisis that we've been through, but it's also linked to the whole raft of job redundancies and universities de-skilling and removing various departments. And so we feel, those of us in the sector see that as being a kind of continuum for years to come. So I think everybody now is thinking about the insecurity of their lives and what they can do to plan for that. And I think some of your really basic but useful points have been really helpful. So thank you. Denise, I might just bring you in here if I can. You've made an interesting comment just to sort of pull us out a little bit in the broader wellbeing situation with COVID. And you've written a comment here in the but I just wonder, I might invite you to talk to it if you would.
Okay, yeah, it just struck me looking at the many hats. I thought, yeah, it's true. Many of us have had our lives changed. Some willingly and some not. And I think that's been and continues to be actually very, very hard to watch. Even if it's not happening to you, it's happening to others. And I think there is a sense that you don't you don't think you ever actually define yourself as a professor. Who cares? Like, no one. I live in a one pub town, which happens to be closed, by the way. Anyway, but no one cares about whether I'm a doctor or none of that. But you think your head's never really in that space. But actually, when it comes to what you've had your head in for a lot of years, I think it's correct to say for many of us that it's a significant adjustment. And this is not just about someone like me, but I think people who are really heavily invested in teaching and learning at universities and as well as their own research. And yeah, it's true. We do have that amazing, not luck, I use the unfortunate term, we do have the fortune that we've made to have very rich lives. Like, we don't just work for tertiary institutions. We have this whole other thing that lights us up, much of which we have to put aside in these really difficult times, I might add, and that's a grief, that's a loss. But I think that we are still sort of caught up. And my colleagues who are sessional teachers who, speaking of UniSuper, who, as we all know, well, when I was a sessional, didn't earn any super. You had no super on your salary. And but now, still don't have as much as people who have an ongoing an appointment. Anyway, so I think people who are involved in our sector, they're not necessarily there for the big bucks, that's for sure. They are emotionally and with head and heart invested in the sector. And some of those changes have been really, really abrupt for many people. And I think that is really difficult. So the many hats thing was interesting because we forget we have all these parts to ourselves. Anyway. Yeah.
Thanks, Denise. People, we've only got a few minutes left, but I would really welcome if anyone had any thoughts. Just sharing a sense of how you or your institutions where you are has responded, what kind of pastoral care and TLC is in the space, and maybe even just if anyone had any brilliant thoughts around strategies for addressing some of the challenges that Julia and Derek have faced from your own particular perspective. It'd be just great to share it. We've got a couple of minutes left, so feel free, if anyone wanted to put their hand up to offer some thoughts, we'd really welcome it.
Hi, I'm going to jump in here, David. Thank you so much.
Please do.
David and Julia. And look, one thing, I'm just going to freeform this question a bit. I think one of the things that's been a real struggle, and I think in Melbourne over this longer duration, is because we approach, like Denise was talking about, we approach our work as artists. And when you're an artist, you actually don't do your job 100%. You always go that extra mile. You actually work at 150% because you want the magic and the impossible to happen for your students. And one of the things I think in my leadership role I've been trying to work with is that we did that last year. And I think the hardest thing about going back into this space over this last semester is the burnout and how to manage that in a team context and how to kind of pace yourself. And I think we're all guilty of how we manage that. And then also what we care deeply about our students. So that kind of connection with the students and allowing them, working out that right balance, I suppose, of their autonomy, but holding them to make sure that they can excel in an artistic space, which requires risks. And that kind of risk and going into the unknown requires that level of underpinning and pastoral care. So I don't know that there's an answer, but it's actually something that I know that I've faced daily. And I mean, many people will know we've had a lot of death at VCA in art. We've had 2 significant colleagues die. We've recently had an alumni die. And these things impact us profoundly. And I think it's been more difficult because we've been atomized and isolated. And yes, I'm just going to pop that out there. I think really this issue of well-being, how we sustain ourselves, and then with the risks, of course, of our own financial security is really concerning within not just the university sector, but also within the broader arts industry. Just going to say that as a comment.
No, that's really great, Simone. There's been lots of really positive affirmation from what you've just said in the chat. I think it's really challenging in the sense that because you're right, I think artists and educators are passionate about what we do. We go 150%. But with all of the adversity that we faced, it's kind of required some degree of pragmatism, because otherwise we'd just go nuts. I'm kind of interested about whether you would agree that you need to be, or you have been pragmatic in how you've managed your relationships with students, or how you've been such an important presence for them at VCA in that last period of time.
Look, I'm just working it out. I don't think I've done it. I don't know whether I've had the right strategies or not. I think a lot of us have kind of tipped a bit far that way. I mean, I've been trying to encourage my staff, to take some time out if we can. But of course, the more time, we've been really blessed. The VC gave us some recharge days, and that was fabulous. But of course, with a recharge day, you have to take a day off. And of course, the 300 emails that come in during the day doesn't necessarily equate that. So we've been trying to work with that. Actually, one thing that did happen that I think kind of worked, because we're in the COVID crisis, we kind of had a weird opportunity because of something that happened with COVID that allowed us to shift our teaching semester. And so we actually lifted it and shifted it a whole week back, which gave us 2 non-teaching weeks in the normal break. And I think that did make a difference to the staff and the students and took a little bit of pressure off. So it's sort of one of those odd academic opportunities that happened because of the way COVID had been impacting us. So, yeah. But with lots of great things with the students, like people were meeting them weekly and having lots of sessions. But I actually think that was really contributing to burnout in my staff. So I don't actually have the solutions. It's sort of a kind of push and pull.
But some of the solutions are very that we've almost so inherent to us, or they're intuitive, that we haven't even been able to explicate them in words, which is why sessions like this are actually really helpful. Catherine, I'm going to come to you in a moment. I just wanted to share, people might have read the chat anyway, but Greg Ackland's written something which I think is beautiful. I think there's a real poetry in this, these little moments. It's the little moments that seem to address the humanity of what we've been through and the way in which we can use those artistic skills to kind of engage with it. Greg wrote that they asked the students to come online via Collaborate to either show their pets and or wear their wildest, strangest, funniest jumper. And it is amazing how just that kind of gesture humanizes this impersonal virtual space that we've been forced to occupy. So thanks for sharing that, Greg. Catherine, what were you going to contribute?
From the Sydney perspective, I was just going to share that although we didn't have the extended lockdown last year, it was very emotionally taxing for everyone in my, School of Art and Design at UNSW. The difficulties students were facing, there seemed to be a higher level of anxiety and terror in 2020. And in 2021, although we got our turn at the 4-month lockdown, somehow it all adjusted to it a bit better. But I think in terms of the financial advice from Derek, I just wanted to endorse that planning idea. I went to see UniSuper only 3 years ago, but it did make me sort my finances out and, start treating it like a serious thing rather than I had no idea how much we spent each week in my household, which was a bit confronting. And then when my partner lost his job in public service last year in May, and we just relocated that week to the Blue Mountains, we then spent 5 months kind of just being really chill, because at least we knew where our money was, right? Whereas if it had happened a couple of years earlier, it would have been a disaster. Anyway, 6 months later, he got his job back, exactly the same job. So that goes to show that it's not just the university sector that's been hit so hard, that in other public sector jobs, people were cancelled and then they were brought back in. So it's across the whole community, you know, not just us, it's everybody.
Great. Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks, Catherine.
Kit, I just wonder if I might bring you in. You've dropped a couple of really interesting asides from your RMIT perspective, and you've concurred with Greg's interest in that idea of the levity and the lightness of touch. Did you maybe just want to talk a little bit about how you've approached it at RMIT, you know, in your role as head of school?
Certainly, and there's sort of a formal and an informal part of this. The formal part is that the university joined with, I think, a network of other universities doing some really quite sophisticated mental well-being training for leaders. I think it was around an 18-hour course, much of it online, of course, you know, another load to carry, but fascinating and rich, and designed to help those who, if you like, are helping others. And I was impressed. You know, good quality, strong networks. It encouraged peer-to-peer conversation outside of the formal learning. It got a lot of us through. So some good tools were built. On the informal side, just realizing that probably the only way to get through was to just shift the tone a little bit, you know, loosen a few screws. I am the last person who should ever be allowed to try and be funny, but just sort of embracing that sort of playful space of, you know, trying to start meetings in not with a spreadsheet, you know, using social media tools to form connection, genuine connection. Again, the blurring of public and private is so complex in this time, but again, if you embrace that, if you can build trust with your peers, build, I guess, a sense of humanity, that culture, I think, has been valuable for me at least.
Thanks, Kit. I just picked up another comment in the chat from Simon Biggs. And Simon, I think you speak for all of us in the challenges of the Zoom, living in that sort of bifurcated virtual space. And what it can do to your head. I mean, just being in the Zoom space, even for those of us that have been here today, it requires particular kind of cognitive capacities that are extremely taxing. But again, Simon, maybe I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about your thinking in relation to how you've grappled with it from your students' perspective in South Australia, and any strategies or challenges that or any solutions perhaps that you've engaged to try and neuter the sort of pejorative effects of Zoom. Anything you'd like to share would be great.
As far as most of my students are working in the postgraduate space, and particularly the research space, I don't currently have any undergraduate students or taught students. But I run the research education program here, and we've got about 70 or 80 PhD and Masters by Research candidates. And we have weekly seminars and critiques and things like that. And we initially tried to run particularly the seminars in a hybrid mode, and it just didn't work. Now, we really hoped it would, but in fact, most of the candidates preferred to do it on Zoom. They preferred to keep their distance, I think more out of fear than anything else. And we kept having technical issues trying to work in a hybrid real space, you know, especially with sound and microphones and things like that. So in the end, we decided to keep all of our seminars entirely on Zoom, online, for everyone, until the pandemic situation is relieved and we can go back to fully on-campus, face-to-face, non-hybrid engagement. And it's got us wondering, because longer term, we were thinking, hey, you know, because everyone's got so comfortable with Zoom, maybe we can keep our seminars and things in a hybrid form, and that really is advantageous for those candidates who are off campus anyway, can't be with us. But the experience we had was so negative that I wonder if that is a possibility in the future. Maybe we've got to think very carefully about the technology side of it. But my main experience was, yeah, we ended up being entirely online. and that wasn't satisfying, as I suggested in my chat comment. But it was more satisfying than the hybrid chaos we had.
It's really interesting, Simon, because I know my teaching experience, I have never had as good class attendance as since we went into Zoom world. And students love the idea of rolling over in bed, turning the computer on, and they're in class.
Turn off the camera.
Yeah, well, yeah, sometimes that varies, no doubt, but there is this quite interesting new space where there was some positive dimensions from students in terms of engagement, which is not to say necessarily that neutralizes all the other difficulties you've spoken about, but yeah, folks, we're just about at 5, and I know we've got another session coming up, so it's probably time for one more comment or question or response if we have one. Anyone else like to share something with us? All right, folks. Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much to Julia and Derek especially, and also all of those that have contributed to the session this afternoon. So thanks very much for coming, everyone.
Thanks for having us, David. I really appreciate it.
Are we staying in this space for the plenary, Kit?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Good news. Nobody leave your seat. And we'll make this quick and painless. We have been saving the best for last in many ways. So look, thank you so much, David, and indeed Julia and Derek, for a very sobering in some ways, but we need those realities, and we need the help to get through this reality. So that support, that generosity is enormously appreciated. And thank you so much, David, for bringing that into the reality of the academic experience. So it's my pleasure then to effectively draw to a close this year's 2021 ACUADS DDCA Conference, but in doing so, to run through the remarkable achievements and successes of the year. So, as I say, we're delighted to be able to present and share with you the 2021 awards from ACUADS. We'll also, I hope at the end, have a moment to just reflect on a few new awards and new concepts being proposed as ACUADS re-establishes its vision and direction, and also to acknowledge a particular very sad loss in our community before we conclude. But to begin with the 2021 awards, as you know, we have a number of award categories ranging from emerging teachers and researchers to established, lifelong fellowship awards, international awards, awards for our professional colleagues as well. All of these are available, and each year we call for nominations, and of course, nominations come in across different parts of that spectrum. This year, I'm really thrilled to advise that we have in the Innovative Research Award category, an allocation of $500 to Dr. Tammy Wong-Hulbert, indeed of our own RMIT University, for outstanding research and launching into an ARC project indeed as an investigator. Our sincere congratulations, Tammy. Again, these are nationally reviewed, benchmarked awards, and it's a great honour to be able to pass that on. Tammy, I don't know if you'd like to say a word or two.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was really surprised by this award, but it really does mean a lot to me to have my research work, especially with immigrant communities, recognised in this space. And really, I'm really grateful for the opportunities I've had to learn from those communities, and also I'm really hoping that in the post-COVID era that I can get back out into the field and actually keep going with this work. Thank you very much, Kit.
Thank you, Tammy. Truly deserved. Wonderful news. In the Innovative Teaching Award category, and I'm not sure if our recipient is available and with us this afternoon, but Dr. Sasha Gribic of Adelaide Central School of Art was a successful recipient. I'm not sure if you're here with us this afternoon, Sasha, but our sincere congratulations. Some very interesting models, particularly around critique, brought across from international benchmarks and examples and adapted into that particular school and context. So many congratulations, Sasha. Moving up to the Distinguished Research Award, and this year, our most prestigious research award, we in fact had 2 recipients in this category. And so it's my sincere congratulations to acknowledge Professor Simon Biggs of the University of South Australia and Associate Professor Philip Samartzis, again of RMIT, as equal winners of the 2021 Distinguished Research Award. Simon, I think you may be here with us. I don't know if you'd like to say a word or two.
Well, just thank you. Thank you to Veronica and Craig who nominated me. You don't win without being nominated, so that's terrific. I think the only thing I'll say is that I think more than most academics, I have a dependent relationship upon the university institution because my research, my practice involves new technology. It's not the kind of thing that you can usually afford to have in a traditional artist's studio or an independent artist studio. So I've always had this sort of particular relationship with the university. So it's nice to get something back from it in a way, other than just access to tools and systems and things. But really, it's more about the community than anything else. No, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you indeed. No, delighted and truly deserved. And Associate Professor Philip Samartzis, again, Phil, I'm not quite sure if you're here with us in the audience today. In fact, I'm pretty sure you're installing at the NGV as I speak for one of their major exhibitions. So many congratulations, Phil. For those that don't know, Phil is one of the leading creative arts scholars of Antarctica, to such a degree that he featured on an Australia Post stamp for the Antarctic series. The final award that we are granting in this round is the Lifetime Fellowship Award, always our most cherished award, an acknowledgement of, as indicated, exceptional contribution over time, often changing the nature and dynamic of our community. It's a very prestigious list of individuals that have received this award. So it is my honour to congratulate Emeritus Professor Denise Ferris of the Australia National University and, of course, for many years, Chair of ACUADS herself. So Denise, I wonder if I could ask you to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Kit. It's wonderful that that's coming from you, and my hat's off to the executive. Thank you very much for considering all those nominations and this one. I guess I have to say all this without crying. It's a difficult. No. I remember landing in ACUADS in 2013 when in May I became head of school, and really landing when I joined the executive formally, I think in September of that year, when there was when other people were, there were a number of positions. I remember the next meeting clearly in the founders room at VCA. Marie was chair then, and it was a very different group of people then, and it all seemed very, very new to me. But I remember that Marie had her fold-up bike in a suitcase and standing outside with her, and she was talking to her while she cycled somewhere, or to her hotel, or to her house, or to somewhere. And it was like, well, yeah, that's pretty interesting. So it was all pretty exciting. It kind of developed from there. When I became chair, it was basically terrifying, because Louise took a job in Queensland fairly soon afterwards. And it was like, as you well know, Clive and Kit, without your executive officer, you are naked. And that was really very, very terrifying. But we had a number of iterations with the executive officers, and you know, I have to take my hat off to Teo for today. What an awesome job you have done, and it's been a real pleasure to work with you, Teo. So I really must say how much pleasure it gives me to share this award with a group of people that I hold in such high esteem. The most recent, of course, was Kate Dorr, and I'm going to actually read down some of the names, and really that is my tribute to my colleagues in terms of this award. Kate Dorr in 2020, Clive Barstow in 2019, Graham Forsyth, who of course was actually one of my teachers at one point, Kay Lawrence, who was a colleague when I was a junior, Jonathan Holmes, of course, through his teaching and learning activities, Lorraine Jennings, Vincent McGrath, Rod Taylor in 2008, David Williams, he will be chuffed when I tell him this, Tony Bishop in 2004, Uda Selbach and B. Maddock, gosh, 2003, Uda Selbach, who established our school, wonderful. 2002, Betty Churcher and Lenton Parr. 2000, Bill Gregory. 1999, Ken Reinhardt, Norman Bagley and Jim Allen. Jim Allen was head of school, and I was a great source of trouble for him when he was head of SCA. I was his problem child. He's never got over the fact that I could be a respectable head of school. Nevertheless, it was great to see Jim a few years ago, and how I loved him even, and probably how he loved me, even when we were driving each other mad and I was an activist student. 1998 was the first fellowship, and that was Jeff Parr. So really, this is all about valuing and appreciating the people who have supported and helped you, and there have been many. I have really enjoyed my time in connection with ACUADS. My only frustration has ever been that we can all see the potential and we all just know that there's only 24 hours in a day. Hugely frustrating, that, hugely frustrating. But, you know, we are moving on, and I can see that as I leave the ACUADS board this year, this is my term that finishes as the outgoing chair. We have that policy of staying on. And but it is so wonderful to see what's going on at ACUADS. And good on you, Kit, and good on you, executive who currently exists. I always praise you up to Kit, and he tries to tell me that, you know, I put you there, but not really, actually, you put you there. So, you know, things will continue, and in such a good way. And what a great feeling that is, to see things going in such a good direction. So it makes me very, very happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise, so much. But that is so very true. It speaks volumes about this organisation, and we do have a breathtakingly delightful, wonderful executive that you built, and the culture that you've established. So it's a privilege, and we thank you profoundly for your many, many, many contributions. So look, we're very proud of those awards. They're modest financially, but deeply meaningful and deeply felt. They are what we're able to do with the support of all of our community. We hope that they will support others in turn, particularly those emerging awards. In our mind, they're to support future promotion opportunities, career progression. They're the leaders of the future, and due acknowledgement of those who have led us to our successes to date. So thank you for that. I'm now going to move to looking ahead in the future somewhat in terms of our 2021 grant for an incredibly exciting project of national impact that will begin, in fact, I think it has begun, but flow through next year, the Inclusive Design Project. And I think we have Dr. Shivani Tyagi with us to receive the award, and Dr. Jane Conroy. And we'd be incredibly grateful if you could outline the project and its ambition, perhaps in just a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, partly because I think it is an absolutely shining example of the work that we can achieve through our networks as a collection, as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we do explain the project, I just wanted to say thank you to ACUADS for awarding us this grant. It's the third time lucky for me applying for the grant, second time with Shivani, who's a fantastic colleague. And I've been supported with ACUADS through my research career right from the beginning. I got a bursary when I was doing my PhD, which helped me present at my first conference. So I just wanted to say thank you for the amazing support that you offer to emerging researchers, early career researchers and PhD candidates. It's just fantastic, and it really has given me opportunities to broaden my network and get to this spot. So we are very excited to receive this grant to get the IDP up and running. Shivani and I have worked together on this with a huge team of collaborators. We've got on board LGBTIQ+ Health Australia, as well as lecturers Lauren Guerreri from RMIT, Sarah Duffy from the University of Western Sydney, Kedwin Owen from Tassie. And we also have charities on board that support period pride and making sure that the shame and stigma around periods is addressed in advertising, in visual communication, in packaging, in marketing. So we've got Nicola Palmer from the Period Revolution, Jane Bennett from the Chalice Foundation, and Rochelle Courtney from Share the Dignity, all on board to help us build this website, this platform, where we're going to offer briefs nationally to design students of all disciplines to address this issue of shame and stigma around periods, especially in the LGBTQ community, and consider the degendering of the products. So we'll have 3 different briefs where product designers will reconsider the design of products, communication designers will reconsider the packaging and the representation of people on packaging, and we'll also have marketing as well as VisCom students reworking messages and representation around these issues as well. But we also have Diva Cup, Cottons and Modi Body on board, so brands from industry wanting to join us as well to help the students throughout these projects. This website, as well as having the briefs, will have interviews with real users to help generate some empathy with the students and the users of these products and help embed sort of user-centered research into their design processes and really reconsider personas beyond that live at the fringes of what we might say is an average user for these products in particular. And what will happen once the students complete the briefs, we're going to run it in both semester 1 and semester 2 during the Australian calendar year, and students can upload this work and it will be viewable internationally to see how our students across the country are addressing these problems. But Shivani and I plan to take the student work as a set of data and also analyse that to create a paper, a report to give to industry, the design industry, with recommendations on, again, how to deal with shame and stigma and representation through what the students, what insights they gain and what designs they create. So we are very excited. Shivani just wanted to smile and say hello. But she's fantastic to work with, and yeah, we're very excited about the project and we're very grateful for the grant. So thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Again, exemplary work, and if I'm saying, the models of these projects specifically could be things that we learn from in many ways going into the future. So the impact on the design, pedagogy's curriculum, I think is remarkable here. So we're very, very honoured to be able to support your project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, we're heading over time. So for those who can stay with us, I'm very, very keen now some very important announcements. I'd like to pass to the Deputy Chair, Associate Professor Catherine Moline, to speak to a remarkable initiative that's come out of conversations within our executive, indeed, including Tao Nguyen, our Executive Officer. So Catherine, if I can pass to you.
Thanks, Kit. Oh, yes, I'm on mic. So I would really, just on behalf of the ACUADS executive, like to welcome Palawa artist and elder Lola Greeno, because we'd like her to help us announce the First Nations ACUADS Award. It's a work in progress that we're currently seeking national perspectives on through the network. Over to you, Lola.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm really delighted to be involved to launch the First Nationals ACUADS Award, noting that I'm announcing the concept and the national consultation is currently underway to seek consensus on the framework and criteria for this award. I'd like to thank in particular Tao Nguyen, and I'm sorry if I don't pronounce that properly, who proposed the concept in a couple of months ago. I'm happy to announce the initiative of the ACUADS. As someone of you know, pardon me, I've spoken to many people in Tasmania and around Australia about an issue that has emerged over the last few years. This issue is that young and often untrained artists are exhibiting or selling creative work for which they don't have the necessary understanding and cultural protocols. This is worrying to older artists and elders who are now compelled to draw attention to the issue and to do something about it. In Tasmania, we've begun to organise and provide training for young artists so they are better informed about how to select cultural materials such as stories, images and techniques that they can draw on with respect and sensitivity and parameters laid down in important and necessary cultural knowledge, often communicated through family stories. The options that are currently under consideration are that the award is available to First Nation students to apply for during the second or third year of their undergraduate or postgraduate degree with visual documentation of an artwork or design and a one-page description of what Indigenous cultural material inspired their work and the cultural protocols and processes they drew on to manage Indigenous cultural intellectual property rights for First Nation cultural material. ACUAD is also currently discussing the makeup of the judging panel and how best to ensure the majority of the panel for this First Nations ACUADS award draws on the 6 states and 2 territories. The current plan is to rotate the panel members between 3 and 5 people for a 3-year appointment to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lola. And thank you, Tao.
Very much. So wonderful for those who haven't met, however, the last 2 days were as another example of the exceptional work you're doing, this really, really remarkable concept. Thank you so much again for that proposal, and Catherine for finding ways to begin to explore this with appropriate advice and consultation. And Lola, we're deeply honoured to have your thinking help us guide this on the way. So this is work in progress, and we look forward to sharing outcomes with everybody in 2022. Thank you. Okay, really to the end now, and I did want to take a moment though on a different front to acknowledge a very sad passing in our community. And again, Catherine, I think is going to briefly speak to that event. I'll support that from here as well, Catherine. So back to you, if I may.
So this is a tribute to Nigel Lendon, who taught several of us involved in ACUADS and who died earlier this week. and I might cry a little bit, but I'll try and keep it short. So I met Nigel Landon in the early 1980s when, as a student straight out of high school, I enrolled in the Bachelor of Visual Arts at Sydney College of the Arts, or SCAR, where Nigel was the postgraduate coordinator. I got to know him better when, as a postgraduate student, 86 to 87, he introduced me to a very small room with a lockable door that we called the broom cupboard. In the broom cupboard, he had set up a Macintosh, he had set up a Macintosh computer for students to write our postgraduate dissertations. In 1986, this was revolutionary. I found him staunch and a bit terrifying, but I knew that he had enormous integrity in the rock and roll world of art schools back then. In my opinion, SCAR was the epicentre of quality art school education at that time, and as an artist, designer, writer, curator and educator now myself, I feel I'm following Nigel's example. When I remember my time at SCAR, I realise anew each time that Nigel and his colleagues were the frontline advocates for artists to be recognised as intellectually engaged rather than merely decorative knowledge producers. They established the model of what education could achieve for creative practitioners in the 1960s, 70s and 80s, and they laid the pathway for my life's work, as they did for many of us here at ACUADS. We are forever in their debt for opening up the university sector for art schools. It's not always an easy relationship between art schools and universities, and back at that time I actually protested against the merger, but we are still, 35 years later, trying to demonstrate that art schools produce important and relevant contributions to society as challenge after challenge rolls in. Funding cuts and rigorous outputs that pass the pub test, not to mention bushfires, floods and pandemics. I last saw Nigel's work in the Field Revival at National Gallery of Victoria in 2018, when he showed non-objective art as, in his words, art that didn't represent something in the world other than itself. Nigel's biography on his website, just Google Nigel Landon, demonstrates why he held such authority for my generation. I won't go into that because I think we've had a long day, but I would like to say thank you, Nigel, for yet again demonstrating your know-how and writing your bio for us to review the summary of your well-lived life. Long may your care, intelligence and dedication continue to inspire us, as well as, quote unquote, your irreverent attitude. A few years ago, we started following each other on Instagram, where Nigel documented his studio developments, interests in modernist art and Afghan war rugs. Our last exchange on Instagram was about a domestic experiment during lockdown last year on whether bananas really do ripen avocados. I will always treasure it. And I don't think I can go on, but I will say, can you turn the video on, please, Kit? I think you need to turn the sound on too.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for that eulogy and for sharing or giving us the opportunity to share Nigel's work. Clearly a profound figure in our larger community across many states and many schools. So a very, very great loss, and our deepest sympathies. We are, I think, at the end of our conference, and again, it's wonderful to be able to celebrate the year with you. Our losses be acknowledged also, but to come together. And Clive and I think, would like to just thank the key people who have made this year's event possible. And so on the ACUADS side, just to recognise again the beautiful conference website design by the University of South Australia students, Darian Wieder, Bettina Biazzo and Jay Riches, under the guidance of Martina Budimir and Dr. Stuart Bulk, with thanks Veronica. And I think that as an example of future models, how we can again help our support our students with work integrated learning opportunities and share them nationally. A wonderful, wonderful benchmark they've set, so we're deeply grateful. I'd like to thank the ACUADS executive collectively for putting up with me and the incredible hard work we've had over the last 12 months. We've, I think, done some exceptional things and moved many mountains during COVID, not least restaging a national conference collectively, collaboratively, which was very much Denise's idea right from the beginning. But also to reboot, refresh, rethink our identity and our brand and our presence. Please, we welcome feedback on the new website. That will continue to change as we go into early next year, become richer and some new additions. So my thanks again to all of my dear colleagues on that. Clive, I might pass to you for DDCA, if that's okay, and then I may help wrap up.
Okay, thanks, Kit. Well, I'd like to thank initially yourself, Kit, for helping me get through that day yesterday. That was a pretty tough one too. Tao has just been amazing. There just aren't words to express how much Tao's done for both days, actually. Our speakers yesterday were just amazing. And when we asked those speakers to join us, we didn't really think how that might tie together. They were just individuals in the planning stages. But I think yesterday showed that there was a lot of kind of single thinking going on that we really need to work with and think about for the future in terms of how we can box clever and how we can box together. So I want to thank all the speakers for yesterday and everybody that's really put into both 2 days. It's been the most powerful 2 days, I think, powerful conference I've ever been to, and I've been to a few, but these last 2 days have been, pretty interesting. And I think at the end of it, I'm just privileged to work with you all, because what gets us through is the passion, and you can feel it through the Zoom screen. You can feel everybody's passion, and listening to Denise and everybody today, it's just amazing. So just thank you for everybody for engaging and listening and putting up with Kit and I for 2 days. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Clive, and it's been a joy, absolute joy, and long way may we continue to collaborate. I think there's a whole future of fun ahead. So thank you indeed also finally to our sponsors, UniSuper, who have really been incredibly supportive for a number of years now. And I actually thought the advice was incredibly insightful and generous, but again, the appreciation, the gesture of support, the understanding, the empathy is wonderful, and made many of the parts of this event possible. Nicole Scott from RMIT University, thank you so much for your help wrangling technology. I know it's been a long 2 days for you too. We may have understated this a little, as I do, but thank you deeply. We're so grateful. And then finally, just to underline again, Tao, your work running both organisations and major change in both organisations, far outthinking myself. And you know, your vision, I point to the award for emerging Indigenous students, First Nations students, also, and your collaboration with Catherine and others, quite exceptional. So Tao, thank you especially. We will finish there, and I would like to say see you at the bar. Find your nearest drink, refreshment, or otherwise loved one, and I wish you a joyful weekend, a magnificent summer ahead. See you in 2022. Thank you.
And Clive, I'd like to say from everyone, thank you for your leadership.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks, everyone. It's just great. Well done, everybody.
See you, folks.
See you.